Wireless LAN Professionals Podcast, episode 192.
Well, thank you, Keith. I really appreciate the opportunity. Like we, I think, agreed. I was probably a little bit ahead of my time 2.5 years ago, but as you said very pointedly, now is the right time. So, if you have kind of been hearing about this for a while, but really haven't been paying attention, now is a really good time to do it.
Wireless LAN Professionals is a place to educate, inform, encourage, and entertain those involved in wireless LANs. This Wireless LAN Professionals podcast is an audio manifestation of these goals. Our host is a wireless LAN veteran, consultant, designer, and teacher, Keith Parsons. And now, the podcast for wireless LAN professionals by wireless LAN professionals.
Welcome. This is Wireless LAN Professionals Podcast, and my name is Keith Parsons, and today I'm here with Dave Wright. Dave, how are you?
I'm doing great, Keith. Thanks. Glad to be here.
You have had quite a journey and still work for the same company, but kind of didn't. Give us the last couple of years' history of where Ruckus went so we know where you are now.
Yes. Great question. So, as you indicated, I've been with Ruckus now. Actually, I think 7 years ago today was my first day at Ruckus. So it's an appropriate question to ask me on my 7-year anniversary. And it was, goodness, I think about 4 years ago that Ruckus was initially acquired by Brocade. And we were with Brocade for, I think it was about 12 or 18 months. Honestly, I've forgotten. But then we were acquired by Broadcom, who then spun us out to Aris. And so we were with Aris as of December 2017. And then in April of this year, I get confused sometimes. But it was actually April 7th of 2019 that Aris was acquired by CommScope. So Ruckus is now the enterprise networking business unit of CommScope. And I'm actually part of the larger CommScope organization, so I don't, sort of up until this latest acquisition, I had been part of the Ruckus unit while we were at Brocade and then while we were at Aris. But as of April, I'm actually reporting into the corporate organization, reporting into our Chief Technology Officer, Morgan Kirk. And so I do regulatory and standards in the office of the CTO at CommScope, and then I'm also president of the CBRS Alliance.
Well, perfect person to have on our discussion today. The topic today is CBRS, and obviously you are the man. You've been talking about CBRS for, at least things I know, for what, 5-6 years?
Let's see, I think 2015. So yeah, let's call it 4 years at this point. I do remember being at one of your events in Phoenix. I think it was January of, was it 17, I'm guessing, or February, January, I think it was 17, talking about the opportunity for wireless LAN professionals, specifically around like the certified professional installer requirement in CBRS. So yeah, I've been talking about it for a while. I tend to be a little bit out in front of things.
If you have to be somewhere, out in front's better than behind.
I guess that's true. As long as you're not in front of a speeding train. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're now come a long way. CBRS is a thing. Can you tell us where the regulatory pieces are in place right now? What the timing is on when the different auctions and stuff are going to happen?
Sure. Happy to. Yeah, it's been a wonderful, call it month. It's actually a little bit more than a month now, maybe 6 weeks, but it's been a wonderful fall for everybody involved in CBRS, and I'll probably sort of interchangeably go between CBRS and OnGo. OnGo being the brand that the Alliance is promoting, much like Wi-Fi is the brand that we all know and love in terms of 802.11 technologies. OnGo is the brand we'll be promoting. But to your question, where things are at, where we're going. Well, it's been a lot of effort to get us to this point, but we were thrilled when we got the FCC's public notice on September the 16th. So yeah, just a month and a half ago, authorizing the initial commercial deployments in the band. That was a huge milestone and something that industry has been working very hard on with our government partners for many years. So that authorized 5 companies who developed the spectrum access systems, which are the geolocation databases which coordinate the spectrum environment in CBRS. It authorized those first 5 providers to begin offering commercial services. And I can even name those. So it's Amdocs, CommScope, Federated Wireless, Google, and Sony. Were authorized to provide those SaaS services, and so that allowed commercial deployments in the band, and we've been, running with that for the last, call it 6 weeks. The ICD, or initial commercial deployment period, is really, largely kind of winding up now, and the SaaS administrators are filing their reports on those initial commercial deployments. In fact, the first one went into the commission, I think it was 2 days ago, that it posted to the ECFS proceeding on CBRS, or the one pertaining to the SaaS admins anyways. So now the Commission and TIA and DoD will be reviewing those ICD reports. And once the ICD reports are finished being reviewed, they will authorize the full commercial deployments, which is essentially just the regular ongoing operation in the band. Both the ICD and the full commercial deployment, when it's authorized, that's all occurring at the general authorized access tier of CBRS. I think most of your listeners will be familiar that CBRS is a 3-tier structure. Tier 1 is the protected incumbents, both federal and some commercial systems. Tier 2 are new CBRS users operating at what's called the priority access license layer. And that's analogous more to licensed spectrum, where you have some protected rights to a 10 megahertz channel in a geographic area, which would be a county. And then finally, Tier 3 is the general authorized tier. And this is the, I'll call it pseudo unlicensed tier, or lightly licensed tier, sort of licensed by rule. Anybody can access the spectrum that's not being used at Tier 1 or Tier 2 at Tier 3. All you have to do is have an arrangement with a SaaS, and that, up to 150 megahertz of spectrum is available to you, or some subset of that if there are incumbent or PAL operations. So everything that's going on currently and will go on initially in full commercial will be done at the GAA tier, or general authorized. And then to your question about auctions, Keith, the FCC at their, let me get this right, October, oh goodness, what day was it? At their open meeting in October, and I've forgotten exactly the date now, they voted. No, I'm sorry. It was the September open meeting. So at their September open meeting, pardon me, I think it was September 26th, if I remember correctly, they voted to move forward, and they voted unanimously actually to move forward with a auction of the PAL licenses, so the Tier 2 licenses, which is now teed up for June 25th of 2020. So, 7 months from now, they'll conduct the auction. It'll probably take couple of months for the auction to be complete, maybe not quite that long, but call it a couple months to be conservative for the auction to be complete, and then maybe a couple more months for them to actually get the licenses issued and into people's hands. So I'd expect it'll be Q3, maybe Q4 of 2020 before we see the PAL tier sort of come into play. So everything up until then will be GAA and the incumbents.
So right now, the 5 SaaSes are up and working. They're coordinating their databases and the changes. And if you're you could actually purchase CBRS equipment and use it with the GAA frequency. Is that kind of a statement where we are today?
That's absolutely right. Yes. For the initial commercial deployments, the SaaSes had to provide sort of the scope or the plan for what they wanted to do in ICD, and those plans were reviewed again by the FCC, NTIA, and DoD. But I expect we'll be progressing into full commercial very soon. So if you want to get involved and you haven't been involved, you could contact a SaaS admin to see if they could amend even their ICD. There's a process by which the SaaS admins can amend their ICD plans with like a 7-day notification. So they can still add to ICD, but again, I would expect we'll be in full commercial here hopefully by the end of the year, if not early in January.
Great, that's some good news. Now, one of the things that I found in studying and looking at this CBRS place is this certified professional installer.
Yes.
It's a certification. There's some training that goes along, but the part that got me was you have to have one. It's not an optional thing. It's kind of a required thing.
Right. So, one of the central theses or presuppositions around CBRS, because we're protecting incumbents, and because some of these incumbents are military systems, you can imagine they were, quite concerned about making sure that we were not going to be interfering with them. And so, one of the ways that we are doing that is by ensuring that the SASs, which again are really responsible for enforcing those protections, they need to know exactly where every CBRS infrastructure radio is located. They don't need to know about the end user devices or the client devices, but they do need to know where the small cells or access points, if you will, are located. And so the commission has said there's two types of infrastructure radios, and I'm going to start calling those CBSDs, which are Citizens Broadband Radio Service Devices, but not end user devices, infrastructure devices, just to make it even more exciting. But there are two categories of CBSDs. There's category A and category B. Category A largely is indoor, low power. It can be outdoor as well, but I think we'll largely see these indoors, and that's up to 30 dBm or 1 watt radiated power. And they also have to be below, if they are outside, they have to be below 6 meters height above average terrain. Anything above that, regardless of the power, is considered a category B, or sort of medium power. And category B is outdoor. Has to be outdoor, can't be indoor, but those can be up to 47 dBm or 50 watts of radiated power. And so the requirement around Certified Professional Installer, or CPI, is that all category B, so the medium power 50 watt or up to 50 watt, have to be professionally installed. So you have to have somebody who's been trained, has gone through the training, received a certification, and has been authorized to enter information into the databases, which feed into the SASs about the radio locations. All category Bs have to be professionally installed, and category A, so the lower power, largely indoor, can be outdoor as long as they're lower than 6 meters. Those need to be professionally installed. If they cannot self-locate to within 50 meters plus or minus horizontal and 3 meters plus or minus vertical. So, the commission expectation is that over time we will have solutions that will allow us to locate to that granularity in the equipment, at least stuff that can potentially radio locate or satellite locate, although the vertical accuracy is an issue today with satellite based location. But they're hoping we'll come up with some technical solutions which will address a lot of the category A installations. But I would say that for today we're relying on CPIs to install these devices.
Well, personally, I went through one of the, I forget the actual term. It wasn't a test question, so I didn't remember it. But there is a category of the training companies who are tracking CPIs. It looks like most of the SASs have their own training and tracking system. So when you get your CPI, you have to register with someone and they kind of watch what's going on. So CommScope's one of the companies that has a training and a certification process. I happened to choose to go through Google and got my CPI. I was actually very good training. It was good information. I learned some things I didn't know prior to it. Had to do some extra research on the whole hat thing. That was not something we do with Wi-Fi very often. So as your CommScope hat on, what's CommScope's process for onboarding CPIs?
Yeah, we, as you mentioned, pretty much, well, at least I know that CommScope, Federated, Google, there are 5 CPI training partners, and I'm not, or I should say, accredited CPI training programs by the Wireless Innovation Forum. And quickly go on a fun tangent and come right back that just explained the relationship of WinForum and CBRS Alliance. So CBRS Alliance is very much focused on LTE and 5G New Radio or 5G NR operation in the CBRS band. Our sister organization, which we work extremely closely with, is called the Wireless Innovation Forum, or WinForum. And WinForum has done all of the sort of foundational specifications to operationalize the CBRS framework, sort of irrespective of the radio technology that's being used. So things such as the communication from the SASs to the radios, all of the communication security between the radios and the SASs, the sensing of the federal military incumbent systems. That was all done at the WinForum level, and they were also the ones who, kind of put in place all of the support programs. And I hate to say support, but the ones that, maybe we don't directly think of, but they're absolutely critical to getting, the ecosystem completed and getting us to a point where we can actually deploy commercial services, including things like the CPI program that we're talking about now, as well as the public key infrastructure and authorizing. I believe as of today, 4 different certificate authorities to provide certificates for the ecosystem. So, again, there's 5 authorized CPI training programs that the WinForum has authorized. CommScope is one of those. And, I think our program is similar to what you probably experienced with Google's. We have an online trading portal that you can sign up for, pay for with a credit card, and then it's really a self-administered, proctored, it's sort of online proctored in terms of making sure that people complete it within a certain time frame, go through all the self-paced training, and then complete an online exam, at which the conclusion of which, if you're successful with your exam, you're issued a CPI number, and then also issued a CPI certificate with which you can sign information that you enter into the it's not really entering it into the SASs, but you enter it into a database which feeds into the SASs, the CBSD information when you install.
Yeah, I was kind of impressed. Well, one, it's a pseudo, I don't know. It's not like a high stakes exam where you go to, like most of us have been to a Prometric kind of place where you physically go. But the proctor who was proctoring mine, I was in a hotel room and they made me walk around the room with the camera on to make sure no one's in the room. Desk was clear. It was pseudo proctored. It was more than I thought. The other thing that really impressed me is that you get assigned a public key, private key certificate. So every time you say, I'm putting this data, this AP is hit this physical location, you're signing it. It's yours, and they can track back to the exact CPI who put that data in. I was kind of impressed the amount of work that's gone in to build this ecosystem.
It was pretty well thought through. There's a gentleman named Richard Bernhardt whose day job is with WISPA, and he's the Working Group 5 chair within WinForum, and he and others. I mean, there are a number of other people involved from all sorts of different companies, but they came up with all of the different requirements for the CPIs, and consistent with what the FCC had put forward in the rules. And I think it's a good, it's been good. I'm interested to see how it's going to play out. I actually had installed my first CBRS system here in my home office the other day, and I had to get somebody involved who was a CPI to certify the location, of course. And so I'm actually looking forward to completing that training myself, so I'll be able to do that, going forward.
Yeah, should have called me. I have one.
I should have called you, Keith. Yeah.
I think for our audience of wireless LAN professionals, that this is a chance. And I'm going to ask at the end of this little speech I'm going to give, I'm going to ask your opinion. But I think this is a place where, in this whole CBRS environment, is where Wi-Fi people are going to really shine, because we're already really adept at taking a box that transmits RF, hanging it off of a wired Cat 6 cable to a PoE switch that connects up to the network, and labeling them, knowing where they are, doing the design around them. It's not, even though it's LTE riding on top of this infrastructure, I don't see the cell phone people who put up cell phone towers stepping up to the plate and doing this smaller scale stuff. So from my point of view, I think this is a golden opportunity for wireless LAN professionals to kind of cross train and get over to this place where they have some value.
I absolutely agree. I think that was probably what I was trying to communicate to to your attendees of the WLAN Pros conference 2.5 years ago, and I was probably just a little bit early with the messaging there. But yeah, that was always my thought, was that especially if the promise of what we're really doing with CBRS and OnGo is largely about bringing LTE and 5G systems indoors, and I think that's one of the primary benefits of these solutions is it allows such a broader deployment ecosystem, because now you're kind of removing the primary obstacle to deployment, which was access to the spectrum. Now anybody can access it at the GA tier for sure, and I think there'll be ways even for enterprises and other entities to get rights to the PAL spectrum if they want it. So now that everybody can access this, and it's usually, as you said, utilizing an LTE or a 5G NR technology, that's somewhat, not that important. It's a lower power, relatively localized, really WLAN type of a deployment. And as you said, we have lots of very skilled and proficient people in the Wi-Fi industry who know how to do this for different vertical sectors. And I think that's the other thing is, not only do they know how to install these things in structured cabling, locate them, label them, all of that, but they also really, to my mind, they know the customer requirements, and there's tremendous amount of, I don't like the term vertical, but sector expertise. So we've got a lot of Wi-Fi folks who work in the hospitality industry, and then there's other folks who tend to work in healthcare, and yet other ones who focus on warehouses and those sorts of environments. And so not only do they understand how to provide connectivity, but they really understand some of the specifics around that sector, whether it's interfacing with a hospitality loyalty management database, which the hotel brands use to keep all their customer information, which now they want to use for certainly wireless identity, as well as potentially location-based services and things like that. So, to my mind, I think they're extremely well positioned to, deliver these private cellular solutions, just as they've been doing with Wi-Fi for a long time.
And I'm just personally admitting it, from when you talked, a couple of years ago till now, I thought private LTE was about the cellular phone calls. And that is obviously, something you can do. I've got a new iPhone 11 and I can make a call over the iPhone 11 through a CBRS frequency, but then it still has to go and connect up to the cellular network to actually have transport. But there's an entire world out there of non-cellular transport LTE where we can just have our own, like inside of a building. It's all private. It doesn't need to exit the building at all.
Right.
That's what excites me, because, if you're a hospital and you want to interface with AT&T and Verizon, you could do that with a DAS today. And maybe there's a CBRS solution that does that exact same feature set and saves you the money of the DAS. But for internal use, the hospital can have an LTE, and even if they don't, own a PAL license, there's enough spectrum that they can use in GAA that hopefully they can have another layer of connectivity where they have the benefits of a license, that they're slightly protected, without all the hassle that you get with Wi-Fi.
Right. And I guess this is a good point, a good point in which I, want to make sure I'm very clear, in my position, in CommScope's position, we don't believe that CBRS is a replacement in a private LTE. We don't think is a replacement for Wi-Fi. We think it's complementary to Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is the most successful wireless technology in the world, and I see it continuing to be so as we enter the Wi-Fi 6 era, and hopefully we'll get more mid-band spectrum available for unlicensed operation here before too long. Knock on wood. But I do think that private cellular solutions in the CBRS band, and hopefully in other bands in the future, I think that just gives some other capabilities to let's say an enterprise IT manager or CIO, frankly, as I said, I hope we get some additional spectrum for unlicensed. But until that's available, I do get concerned that 5 gigahertz is getting a little bit congested, and I don't follow the enterprise Wi-Fi space as much as I used to. I'll admit that right now, but last time I was checking, I think a lot of people in high density environments, certainly in high density public places, were still having to recommend 20 megahertz wide channels simply because of channel reuse and spectral reuse. So, to my mind, this is another 150 megahertz that the enterprise can harness. And again, I use enterprise loosely. That could cover a variety of different industry sectors. But it's 150 megahertz of high quality spectrum in the mid band. It's got great propagation characteristics. LTE has some interesting characteristics relative to 802.11, just in terms of a little bit of range and battery efficiencies on the client side.
In addition, I think it has a lot to offer from spectrum efficiency. LTE is a way more efficient user of spectrum than Wi-Fi. 802.11, it was designed in a whole different era, and we have a lot of baggage that comes from the old system. The whole listen before talk, and only one device per frequency can talk at a time. That was really useful, and it's free and it's been cheap. But LTE offers a lot more capacity to use the same frequency more efficiently. So I agree. I think it's a complement to what we're doing in Wi-Fi, and I just think that our audience needs to kind of wake up. It's time to start looking at this. Maybe 2 years ago when you talked, it was a little early, but we're there now. So what's next for if someone wanted to get into CBRS and just try it in their environment with a couple of CBSDs access points? It's going to be a long time to get. Like I went through some LTE training, and there are a whole eNode B and CBSDs, and it's like, just call them an AP. Well, we don't call them that. So there's a little bit of we all have our own turf with our own words. But if someone wanted to get involved and just do a little trial, what would it take, hardware wise and licensing wise, and talking to a SaaS, whatever? Just tell me if I had a customer who wanted to try out some private
Sure.
LTE.
And I'll say up front, especially wearing my alliance hat, there are many companies that could help you with this, but I'm going to give you the CommScope example.
Totally fine. We understand.
So, I mean, from a CommScope perspective, if you talk to your local Ruckus contact, they'll certainly be able to help you. And it's really a matter of just getting one of our, and I'm going to call it an access point, because we actually do call them Ruckus.
Good. I feel way more comfortable
for now, because that's really what they are. And we have, indoor, outdoor, in the similar form factors to what we have for Wi-Fi. In fact, we have some that even will snap into our enterprise Wi-Fi platforms. But it's a matter of getting the CBSD. We provide a cloud management platform for that. It's similar to the Wi-Fi cloud management that Ruckus offers. This is a Ruckus LTE cloud, is what we call it. And if you used our Wi-Fi cloud management platform, it'll look very similar, because it pretty much is the same foundational software platform, and then we're now using it for cellular system management. So, you get the access point, you connect it to your physical cabling as you would a Wi-Fi access point. You register that serial number into the Ruckus LTE cloud. You do the location information as we talked about. You have a CPI verify that, or if you're a CPI, you verify that using your certificate. And then we will allow you to tell us which SaaS you want to use. So if you have a SaaS relationship, you can just tell that to our cloud. Or if you want us to essentially front end the SaaS for you, we can also do that. And that's all part of the cloud management subscription that we bundle in with the CBSDs. So we can provide the EPC or cellular core services for that in the cloud. Or if you want to do a local EPC, more sophisticated customers may prefer to have the EPC on site. I shouldn't say sophisticated. I guess I should say more those with specific requirements to have, data maintained on site or anything like that. Kind of back to your healthcare example, perhaps. If you want to have a local EPC, or if you have your own EPC, then we don't have to provide that service. It's sort of like the cloud controller versus local controller discussions.
Can you just back up and describe EPC for our audience?
Sure. So in cellular systems, the EPC, or Evolved Packet Core, is really the core components that go along with an LTE network. So in sort of a traditional mobile network operator environment, these are all hosted up in data centers that the big cellular carriers operate, and they include things such as the HSS, which is the home subscriber subsystem, which manages all of the identity in the network. So your SIM card, or your eSIM now is sort of correlates to an identity record in the HSS, and that's how you authenticate into the network. You've got things like mobility management, which is how you move through a cellular network. And then you've got other entities such as the packet gateway, or PGW, which handles things like the data plane, such as what we would do with, like the VDP concentrators from a Ruckus Wi-Fi perspective. So you need all of those services, this EPC services, in order to run an LTE network. And again, Ruckus and others are providing those for enterprise customers as a cloud offering. But if you have specific needs, or you've already got experience with cellular, and you may even have EPC services that you're already administering, then we can certainly interface to those as well with our CBSD radios access points.
And so you get a hold of an AP, you connect it up to your infrastructure, you point it to CommScope's cloud that's doing cloud EPC. What kind of clients do you need to play with?
Right. So I was going to go there next. So really any clients that are authorized by the FCC for CBRS. And what that really means is client devices that have received a Part 96 equipment authorization from the FCC. And the CBRS Alliance actually maintains a list of these. So if you go to cbrsalliance.org under certifications, and you scroll down towards the bottom of the page, you'll see I think we call it FCC Band 48 end user device authorizations. So you can go there and you can get a list of essentially everything that's been FCC authorized from a client device perspective. And this includes really, I think, about 50 different devices and form factors as of today. Everything from the kind of flagship smartphone platforms, latest generations from Samsung, Apple, Google, LG, on the smartphone side. Then you've got things like push-to-talk devices, so the Motorola SLN 1000. There's a range of IoT modules, multi-tech, Cradlepoint, and others which can bridge from Ethernet or bridge from serial to CBRS, or Wi-Fi to CBRS for that matter. And then there's quite a large range of CPE equipment, which is probably not as germane to your audience, but that's really more for fixed wireless applications where you're delivering residential or maybe small business broadband over a fixed link. The WISP community is very interested in those solutions, so there's a wide range of CPE equipment available now. And then there's some kind of other interesting USB dongles for laptops. Dell actually has an integrated CBRS module for some of their laptop platforms now, HPE as well. And some security cameras, barcode scanners, some other kind of interesting form factors that are coming out now with CBRS support in them. So you'd get really any of those clients, and then you need for the identity management. Really today, that's done with either a physical SIM or with an eSIM. So with the Ruckus solution I was talking about, if you're using the Ruckus Cloud, we provide SIM cards that go along with that, and then you register those to your account, put those in your end user equipment, and that's how you authenticate into the network.
So if you're authenticating with the SIM, does the SIM need to be like an AT&T Verizon SIM, or this is a Ruckus SIM that just allows data only, and then your EPC kind of puts it in a little area?
Right. It's a Ruckus SIM that connects through the private network. So I mentioned that I installed a Ruckus private LTE CBRS solution here the other day. So I now, in my iPhone 11, I have the Ruckus Nano SIM occupying the SIM slot, and I've actually moved my AT&T subscription. I guess I should have just said M&O, but it is with the AT&T.
Over to the eSIM.
I moved that to the eSIM, right? So I actually have two identities in my device now, and my device, as I'm looking at it right now, is actually connected to both the AT&T network and to my local Ruckus CBRS network here in my home. And then I can just point it to which one of those networks I want it to use for data services. The voice right now, I'm relying on AT&T. We're working with some partners on demonstrating sort of private voice PBX or local PBX type integration from a private perspective, but we don't have that in place today. So in my case, I'm using AT&T for voice.
So right now, you could be accessing data either through your eSIM on AT&T, through your physical SIM on the CBRS via Ruckus, or via your Wi-Fi.
Yeah, indeed.
And then it's kind of reliant on the client device itself to choose which one I'm going to use for the backhaul at any one time.
Yep, indeed.
Yeah. So in your case, it's the iPhone itself making that decision. The other thing your phone has is the ability to do Wi-Fi calling. So you can use your Wi-Fi to then send frames across, and then AT&T picks it up on the backside. Can you do the same thing with the CBRS as your data plane? And then I don't know, it's called CBRS Calling, if that's a thing.
Right. Through a private system today, there's not a way to do that with what I have. Now, once we have more of a neutral host environment in place, I believe that will be the case, and you will be able to, sort of do CBRS calling, if you will, using your term. That would require the ability to form that IPsec tunnel through the CBRS network. There's nothing prohibiting that today. It's just it would require some modification on the client device.
Sounds good. Well, I think some of our audience will love to get in and start playing with this. I recommend and can easily recommend going and getting CPI trained. It's a next step, something you can work on. And I just want to thank Dave for spending the time today to talk to us about the state of where CBRS is. Any last words you have there, sir?
Well, thank you, Keith. I really appreciate the opportunity. Like we, I think, agreed. I was probably a little bit ahead of my time 2.5 years ago, but as you said very pointedly, now is the right time. So, if you have kind of been hearing about this for a while, but really haven't been paying attention, now is a really good time to do it, with GA being authorized and expecting the full commercial here in the next few months. I do think it's a great opportunity for wireless LAN professionals who've been working with unlicensed technologies and Wi-Fi. This is a great way to expand your repertoire. I think that there's a tremendous amount of interest in private LTE. I just got back from Mobile World Congress Los Angeles, which was last week, and private cellular is a huge topic. I do believe that there's really a huge demand for it for certain applications and for certain industries in particular. So again, I think you're well positioned, and I would encourage you all to, as Keith said, do some research, maybe look into going ahead and getting the CPI training, and then talk to your vendors about what they're going to be offering in the space.
Well, thanks again for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Keith.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Wireless LAN Professionals Podcast, the podcast for wireless LAN professionals by wireless LAN professionals. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @WirelessLANPros for all the latest news and updates, and also connect directly with Keith on Twitter @KeithRParsons. Head over to www.wlanpros.com for this episode's show notes, as well as the latest in all things Wi-Fi.